Hi, this is Gautam, and as part of today's book discussion, we'll be looking at this book, Fast Food Nation, written by Eric Schlosser. I'll have to get the pronunciation right. So, what the all-American meal is doing to the world. This is one of the very good non-fiction books which I have read recently. Since we did Invisible Cities last time, I just thought we'd go to non-fiction. Now, if you look at what makes a book essentially great, you can talk about multiple factors. The structure of the book, if you talk about it, the lucid writing, the proper portrayal of characters, and proper research, proper interviews and stuff. And all those factors which we talk about does make this book really interesting, and that's what makes this book a very good read. But apart from that, there is a very important aspect which makes this book stand out. Now, as you can clearly see, as the title itself states, it is about the food industry, especially the fast food industry, the proliferated French fries to hamburgers and stuff. But if you look at the book at the outset, it might seem to be a book which is only about the fast food industry. But what the book does is that it does not delve deeper into the subject of too much technicalities as which chemical agent is specifically used in the fast food industry or so and so. The beauty of the book is that it is as wide as possible, and each and every chapter provides you opportunities in which you can explore multiple domains even if you want to. Okay, I'll just provide a broad overview of what the book tries to provide. Like, the book talks about the history of a few personalities, the founder of McDonald's, the founder of KFC, and through their history tries to unravel what exactly happened in the United States, and how does a developmental policy of constructing more and more highways enable the development of these fast food restaurants. On one hand, it talks about the workers who are involved in that process, about their economic background, do they have the potential to form labor unions, and how difficult it is to work in slaughterhouses. If you think that these are only the aspects it deals with, no, it moves on to the technical aspects, but it actually lays subtle there. It's not very technical if you look at the reading. It talks about how meat industry functions. The author takes you inside the kitchen how things are manufactured. He takes you to the farms in which the animals are reared, and it also talks about the economics behind it, like why when it comes to manufacture of potatoes for the manufacture of cultivation of potatoes for the manufacture of French fries, you see that how normal farmers were actually muscled out of it, and how does the cowboys who were the pride of the West were pretty much driven out when the industrial farming process started, and how they kind of lost to the multinational corporations, and how the entire process became more and more supply chain oriented and profit oriented rather than being hygienic. So if you look at all these aspects, the book does not delve too deep into it. It just gives you a broad understanding of how each and everything works out. It also talks about the chemicals which is used there, and multiple stuff. And the beauty of the book is that at the end of the book, there is a specific afterword in which the author, this was an older book. It was published in the year 2001. So what he says is, after the book was released, there would definitely be a lot of criticism, especially from the corporations who run the fast food chain itself. And those criticism has been taken up, and he tries to address some of them itself. So that in that he tries to kind of give a balanced argument on how the industry actually functions. And the beauty of the book is that once you finish the book, you will definitely think twice or thrice before venturing into a fast food chain, or eating commodities, or at least thinking about how these commodities are manufactured. Now, apart from this being a good book, I'd just like to add a very significant point which is mentioned in the book. I'd like to elaborate on that, and my own experience being in a country like India. Now, this book was published in 2001, and if you look at the development of the fast food industry, it was primarily, we are talking about starting from the 1950s and 60s, post World War II, and it kind of explodes in the United States. But you have pretty much now, being in a country like India, in terms of economic growth, I can quote the decade after post 2000, like the country does a lot of economic reforms post 1991, and right now we are in 2019. So the last 15 or 16 years, there has been growth primarily in the services sector. We are essentially talking about the software industry, of course, information technology, and yes, of course, sectors like retail, insurance, banking, teaching, and so on and so. So if you look at it, growth is primarily concentrated on this sector, and with economic growth in this particular sector, if you look at the food market, how things have evolved, it has exploded. Like 15 years or 12 years earlier, if you had looked at movies, if you had looked at, I don't know, even books, if you had read about it, things like visiting a McDonald food chain or KFC food chain is KFC or Subway is extremely rare. But if you look at it right now, you go to any, not just metropolitan city, even in tier 2 cities, you have these multinational corporation, big fast food chains establishing their centers, and they're pretty much everywhere. So that kind of shows a transition that this issue is not just associated with developed nations or Western nations, but it has slowly migrated to countries which are in the global south. And the second important factor, which was not explored completely in the book, is regarding the cultural impact of this book. Now, let's take jeans for example. Jeans is a cultural symbol, like it is a Western cloth, and it is actually taken when a person wears that particular accessory. He feels that he's actually part of the West. It is considered as a symbol of modernization. Similar to that, if you look at the commodities, you take your hamburgers or your French fries. Now, these are technically commodities from the West, and when people in the global South, there is a huge cultural impact. It is felt that if you eat pizzas, if you eat French fries and hamburgers, it just makes you feel good because you just feel that you've become developed, or it just gives you a sense that you're trying to mimic the Westerners, and that gives you a sense of fulfillment. Now, this cultural impact is much more serious than what you talk about the economic and, of course, economic and biological impact is pretty much important, but the cultural impact, what these food commodities are actually doing to countries in the global South, especially on the East, is far reaching. So, these are my thoughts on the book. I definitely recommend you to read this book because it is just a starting point and there is much more to explore. So, if you have a chance to read this book or you've already read this book, do comment below and maybe we can have a discussion. Thanks for your time.